All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 19th, 2022 last council meeting of the year. And Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll.
All right, Hausch.
I'm here.
Stokes.
Here.
MacQueen. Here. DeVore-Leonard.
Here.
Carmen Brown is unable to make the meeting this evening. Also present is Village Manager Jose Salmeron and Finance Director Amy Kemper. We do have Public Works Director Johnny Burns and Chief Paige Burge on Zoom.
Okay. Thanks so much. And yeah, our I know Carmen's would be here if she could, and so thinking about her. And with that, let's go ahead and do announcements. And Josue, I know you have a few.
I have at least one. You know what's happening December 31st?
I can't even think.
Well,
what could be happening?
We're welcoming a new year.
Okay.
And we're doing so with New Year's Eve ball drop. So that's happening December 31st. So we're partnering with the Miami Township again.
Nice.
So I expect a healthy turnout.
Sweet. And did I hear, is Lance handing it over to his son this year? Is that
I think Lance is looking to continue the legacy. I spoke with him over a week ago, and he's planning to be there. So
okay.
So I think this year's Lance. I don't know if he's going to have an elf or
all right,
someone else take over. But
all right.
Lance is on board.
Sweet. All right. Well, I am definitely intrigued to see how that goes. Do we have any other announcements from council members? Marianne?
Well, on Friday, Marilyn Moyer from Township and Mary Pan and I went to the Power Clean Future Ohio Awards luncheon that was sponsored in Columbus with the Ohio Mayor's House. It was at the Columbus Athletic, which is quite a building at the end of the day. And we had a plaque, and I meant to bring a plaque, and I forgot the plaque, but we got a plaque participating in what's now in 41 communities in GCCHD. So that was really cool. Also, I just want to acknowledge that on the Arts Council acknowledged Bob Baldwin Jr. and named the Arts Gallery after him, and noted that through his almost 90 years, I guess, in Yellow Springs, born here, grew up here, he has given made significant contributions to the arts community and to the Wheeling Gaunt statue in particular. So it was a very cool ceremony. John Gudgel was there. Kevin Magruder talked, and apparently, I think it was in '54. Bob did. Is it 400 yard dash? He held the record until John Gudgel came along.
Oh, well.
Oh wow!
Who broke it? So that was cute.
That sounds like Gudgel.
Yeah.
So does that mean the Arts Council now owns that space?
And no, I don't believe that's the case.
Okay. But thank you for
I'm not
highlighting
sure
that. Yeah. Okay. Of course, I always have a few things. I wanted to, I saw that Melody Kingsley got the award for the Outstanding Contributions to Health Education Award. And
Yes.
yeah, that was really exciting because I think we all know that Melody has been really supportive of the village vis-a-vis Greene County Public Health and, helping us navigate everything that's been going on. So well-deserved, and what a cool resident. I also wanted to mention, I thought it was worth noting that our most recent active transportation advisory committee meeting highlighted school safety zones, which I know is something that the schools are really excited about. And Josue was at that meeting, and we're collaborating as we always do on that. Really good work. we have had another joint meeting with the township and the school board. And that, along with our last budget session, is on our what is it? Yeah, no, I mean, but what do we call our YouTube station? It's Community Access Yellow Springs? Yellow Springs Community Access. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure I got that right, because there have been a couple out there, but those are out in the mix. And we had a great nonprofit networking meeting last week. I did want to mention that I highlighted that we are, I think, shifting to trying to focus more on in-kind support from the village. And so as council members, talk to constituents, I just wanted to let everyone know that, that was one of the things that I emphasized at that meeting. And oh my gosh, the village holiday party was so awesome. Yeah, so thank you. I know Chief Burge is not here, but her recognition of folks, or maybe she's online, was really amazing. We also, beyond like recognizing several people for 5 years, our water guy, Brad Alt, 15 years, Samantha Stewart, who has been running the youth program and the pool, 20 years. I mean, it was just really cool. And I know we were all there to see that. And then, yeah, the last thing I want to mention is kind of just more of a, as we're moving into the new year. I met with Gavin, but I've been thinking about this a lot, which is, I guess I want us as council to think about how we are investing our time at our meetings, and making sure that we're thinking about how we're advancing some of the issues that are really important for our community. And I guess, in general, I think that there's an opportunity for the Committee on Committees to help with this, but I know I have been thinking for a while that oftentimes we talk a lot about things that maybe have like minimal impact, that we could probably figure out other ways to move those issues forward. And so I just want to recognize that I am definitely on board with making sure that in 2023 that we spend as much time on affordable housing, infrastructure, and some of our other goals in these meetings as possible. And so, I don't know. I just felt like I needed to kind of get that out there, that, I think it's important for us to make sure that the time that we spend here is valuable. So with that, I think we're going to move into the consent agenda. And so we've got any other announcements? Yeah.
Just that I did not get the joint meeting minutes done. That can come off, number 3.
Okay. All right. So consent agenda, then we've got 2 items. And first is our December 1st work session minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. And second are our minutes from the last session on December 5th. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. So review of the agenda. Anything we want to add, subtract, or modify? Okay, so does anyone want to add the requests for Kwanzaa, or?
Someone should, apparently.
Well, we're not.
Yes. I found this at the desk here. I don't recall whether this was sent via email. I don't think I saw it.
Literally came through this weekend. It was very last minute.
Okay.
So which is never a good thing, but yes.
Right, well, with this being the second meeting of the month, I don't know if we want to put this down as special reports or new business.
I think it needs to go into new business.
Yeah, it'd be
because
new
there's a
business.
monetary request there.
Mhm.
Okay,
Well, I'd
so
like
you're
to-
making a motion?
Yes, I'd like to
Okay.
add this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So we'll add that to new business. Anything else on the agenda? Okay, then I think, Kevin, it's off to you for petitions and communications.
All right, thank you, Brian. And we do have several pieces that came in, but several of those letters that came in were part of one petition started by Matt Raska that speaks to the police budget or asking for a reduction in the police budget. Lori Askeland had a letter in there as well regarding a reduction of the police budget. And I'm just trying not to name all of them because there were several pieces. I'm just going through this list. The Greene County Community Health Department issued a letter encouraging folks to stop smoking. It's the Baby and Me Tobacco Free program. Also a letter from Greene County Health regarding COVID test kits giveaway that's happening between now and the end of the year. And another letter from Greene County Health advising that last week was flu vaccination week, but since you're hearing it now, pretend that this week is flu vaccination week. And if you haven't gotten your flu vaccination, please consider doing so. And we also have the court clerk's letters from Mayor's Court for those reports, and also a letter from Marianne MacQueen regarding the Affordable Housing Fund. And I know I sort of stumbled over those police budget petition letters. I'm just going through the list and making sure that they're all part of one large petition, and that is the case. So I don't think I missed anyone by name there. All right, so I think that's all. I'm sorry for the confusing sounding message.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
Sure.
And yeah, and I think you're right that we, got a template letter that it looked like about 40 people signed offhand. So, okay, great. All right, so we're going to move into legislation. And first up is our second reading of ordinance 2020. Oh, okay. I'm just remembering. Before we get into legislation, I'd like to ask for a motion to read in 2022-41 and 2022-42 by title only.
I move that those ordinances be read by title only.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So with that, Judy, let's go ahead and read 2022-41 in by title only.
All right, this is approving the 2023 annual appropriations and declaring an emergency, Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing, and this is our second reading, and we're doing it by emergency of our budget because we want to make sure that that budget is in place for next year. Just to remind folks, we've had, I'd say at a minimum, 4 budget work sessions, lots of discussion at council table. And yeah, I will say I don't think we've had a more thorough budget process in the 9 years that I've been on council. And, since this one. And so very happy about the work that's been done. One of the things that we definitely flagged is that, we want to make sure in the future we've got documents earlier and that sort of thing. But I think we've had a good opportunity to have an in-depth discussion. So looks like Josue's gunning to talk a little bit about sort of how to frame some of this, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, council, for the opportunity to have one budget work session that we had last week. It was the 9th, right? Or, I can't remember the date. And I thought it was very, very productive because we got clarity on some of the aspirations and changes council wanted to see in this next version of the budget. So the version that's in front of you reflects the conversation at our last budget work session. To summarize, we've made 2 modifications. We eliminated the purchase of the police vehicle from the police department. That contributed to a reduction of the budget of $55,000. And we adjusted the expense for the transition of the planning and zoning administrator from 6 months to 2 months. And that created a budget reduction of $23,090. But that's total. The total adjustments are $78,090. And that reduced the off funds deficit to $2,933,631. I know that I'm certainly concerned about the deficit, and we will work through the year to reduce that number as we work through the year, and certainly increase our fund balances by reviewing all the expenses and closing up any loose projects we have this year. Amy, is there anything you want to add to it? Yeah, so that's in a nutshell the changes. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have on the budget that's before you. Yes, Marianne?
Yes, I have a question and a request. So I'm looking at revenues in the general fund under charges for services, and it's $170,000. What is that in the proposed budget?
The charges for services in revenues. Or any particular fund you're talking, the general fund?
General fund.
General fund.
Now, perhaps it's expensive. No, but no, it's revenues.
So we have
That's under-
several line items that roll up into the charges for services. Some of them would be wedding fees.
Oh, okay.
There are several line items. I don't know if you have a hand.
Oh, okay, miscellaneous, it's fees, I see, I wasn't catching the numbers below. So the main thing is $151 miscellaneous, I guess. That's nice to have miscellaneous of
It's not necessarily miscellaneous fees. It's booked miscellaneous because there's several small categories that go into it. I'm going to open the budget just to make it easier for me to look at it on the Excel sheet versus looking at it on the PDF document that you have.
Yeah, I think while you're opening it, I did want to emphasize, and certainly Amy or Josue, correct me if I'm wrong, but since the police department budget has been a major focus, my understanding is that after removing the vehicle, that we're talking about 25,000 increase in wages, which I think mostly reflects cost of living adjustments, and 39,000 for capital, which, by the way, includes, I guess, we've got the body cam
Yes,
grant.
we got the one camera grant.
So we had budgeted for the match for that. So I guess I just wanted to highlight, again, unless I'm wrong, my calculation is about 64,000 increase in the police budget from last year. So
this is a revenue source. So I was just interested if we had a new revenue source.
So the revenue
Right.
source, I pulled it up to answer your question, Marianne. What makes up the general fund for charges for services? We don't have anything assessment fees. We have commercial rents, and the commercial rents make up. We have Stony Creek. We have the Eastman rentals. We rent out towers. We rent out 2 towers, the SBA tower and the Verizon tower. So that makes up the commercial rents. We also have residential rents, which make up the rents for loss in place. So that brings up your total to $170,000.
Okay, okay.
We don't have, the mayor does a lot of wedding fees, and this is something I'm going to connect with the mayor that maybe we start charging for some of those weddings.
There is a line item for a separate line item for that, I think that had nothing in it. Is that when I was looking?
Yeah.
But, so that was my question. I just thought, oh, maybe we have some plan going. Actually, I wondered if it was the parking. Oh, good.
That would have got me excited.
Yeah. So I am going to make the request that I made previously about funding the Affordable Housing Fund. And I had suggested that we fund it from, as frequently as done, from lodging taxes, lodging permit fees, zoning, building fees. But I was talking with Josue today, and Josue, you can confirm or correct me, that I think you said we could actually put money from the general fund into the affordable housing, as opposed to, for the purpose of this budget. Did I get that correct?
So the request that I received earlier today, and speaking with Brian as we were planning for the meeting, and the reason we wanted to make sure that we have answers to any legal questions that may come up. And one of the legal questions was, if council were to make a motion to add to an expense, would it be a substantive change? If it's coming from the general fund, then it would not, and the amount that was being considered under 40,000, that it would not be a substantive change. And so for the purposes of the legalities of the motion and including in a budget, it's not a substantive change. It could be made at this meeting. Judy, that's your understanding?
The other aspect of that is that there's an expectation that any such thing is discussed publicly, vetted publicly. That, of course, would need to happen, but yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so if the funds are coming from the general fund, from the cash reserves, then that's something that council can make tonight. If it's coming from any other fund, particularly the fund that was discussed last week, which was the Green Space Fund, that has other requirements. We would have to get the tax commissioner involved, and so that wouldn't be something that council could vote on tonight, which is to reallocate funds from Green Space Fund to the Affordable Housing Fund.
Okay, so thank you. So I will ask that we consider for the future, not for this particular budget, that we decide on some percentage of some line items from something to go into the Affordable Housing Fund, and we would have a year to get that set up. But for tonight, I want to make a motion that we add $40,000 to the Affordable Housing Fund from the general fund.
I will second that
I'm
motion.
making that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion?
And I make that because we have said to our audience, council so far has agreed on two primary goals, council goals, and village government goals. Working on our infrastructure, we all know that there's a lot of repair, and affordable housing. And yet we only have $8,000 in the Affordable Housing Fund, which I think, if we're going to say it's a goal, that is not enough. So that's the rationale.
And I agree, Marianne, with your rationale. I was wondering, however, if we would just, and I know I did just second her motion, just pass the budget and then make the changes later, if that were more appropriate. Now, again, if we vote on that, it's moving money around, and per the previous conversation, it's legal to do so, so not any problems. Just considering a more streamlined process, I was wondering if we would end up just passing the budget as is and then make that request later in calendar 23.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Gavin, anything you want to say?
You can go first.
Okay. All right. So I am going to support this. I will say, I think we talked about it and, at our last work session. And to me, it was, I think most important that, rather than like worrying about where we're moving money, which we can do any time of the year, that we actually like talk about what we're going to do with that money and be intentional. But that being said, I, honestly, I don't have a problem with like making this decision now, because ultimately what we're saying is that we're appropriating it, but we still need to make a decision about, how and if that money is going to be spent. So I'm not going to hold it up in that regard, but I will say, to me, what's more important is, number one, the work session that we're planning, where we actually talk about intentionally what we're going to do related to affordable housing and housing. So I think focusing on moving money around is not the important focus. And number two, since it was brought up, I think that we are shifting priorities away from the Greenbelt and into affordability. And so that $210,000 that's sitting in the Green Space Fund that has not been spent for pretty much all the time I've been on council needs to be rethought of. And I mean, ultimately, that can just be pulled back into the general fund so that we balance things out. But again, to me, the focus really shouldn't be on putting money into the affordable housing fund. The focus should be on what we're actually going to do intentionally with that money. And so I guess I do want to also clarify that this does not mean that this money is being allocated to Home Inc. or any other particular project, because that got really mixed up last year. And so, anyway, I'm going to support that only because I see us just basically moving funds around. So, Gavin.
Yeah, I'm happy to support it with the same sort of caveat remarks that I made when we had our last meeting, which is basically that my understanding of our current financial position, and I'd say that the budget process probably raised more questions than it answered for me in a healthy way. I mean, as a first time, person going through the budget, learning about everything. But as I understand it right now, I think we talked about this at the last work session, our budget will be okay in 2023. We're deficit spending, but we have cash reserves. It's not like we're just, and I've talked to a few residents, I'll say, over the past couple weeks. I think that their concern is that we're actually spending money we don't have. That's not true. We have the money. It's just for this annual budget year, we're spending from reserves in order to have income and expenses line up. And for 2023, we're okay. But by 2024, if we don't either raise revenues or reduce expenses, then we will not have these same kind of reserves to deficit spend and to balance the budget on the future. So while I'm definitely supportive of us figuring out how to invest in affordable housing, the primary thing I go into this coming year, and it's something I think we should talk about at Finance Committee. I think, I'm interested in figuring out what the right home is for this conversation. But I think our hard work to do over the course of the next year is to figure out new revenues or cut expenses to make sure that we're in a good position in 2024. And assuming that we can do that, frankly, I hope that we can figure out how to spend more money on affordable housing than this amount. So anyway, those are my caveats, but I can support the what it seems like sort of conceptual framework of 40,000 more for affordable housing.
Yeah.
Can I ask something of Amy, I guess, Amy Kemper, and the finance director, and that is, the question is, once you've moved money out of the general fund and into a particular budget line, you cannot then move it back out, so that if you in fact did not spend those funds, they would be sort of frozen in that position. That's my understanding. If council moves tonight to say, this is our intent, this is where we want this money to go, the finance director has the ability to make sure that that money is not spent out of the general fund, so that it is available to move into that budget line when it becomes necessary to do so. And I just wanted to hear from Amy as to which is the better way to attack that problem.
Once funds go into a special fund like the Green Space Fund, we have to ask permission from the tax commissioner to move them back. Josue and I did a little research on the Green Space Fund, and what's in there right now is actually general funds that you set aside at one point. So we still have to ask permission to move them back for purpose and all that fun stuff. So it's not a do it today kind of thing. It's set it up and figure out what we need it for and then ask permission to do that.
So if council were to say, we would like this amount of money to go into the affordable housing line, finance director, you figure that out for 2023, you might have time then to figure out and move the money from green space into affordable housing.
Right. Otherwise, it would just increase our deficit spending. Right. That makes sense.
And while we're on this, do you know, like, is this like when you say you asked the tax commissioner about doing it, is this like a thing that's, like, do you expect it to be approved?
I don't know. I've never had to do it before.
Okay.
I think the last time we did it was through the Common Pleas Court instead of the tax commissioner.
Right, and that one, the last time we moved funds out of a dedicated fund was our bond retirement account. And that one required us going to Common Pleas Court. The process for us to get funds out of Green Space Fund is there's a new procedure set in place in 2017 that allows us to go to the tax auditor for that approval. So now we don't have to go to court, we just go to the tax administrator. And we, in this conversation or research, we did speak with our auditors last week about the movement of funds. So if, to your question, is it something that's going to get approved? I think that there's an argument to be made with if we're talking about the Green Space Fund, that it's all general fund money already in there, that we have a good justification that all the funds that are there are from the general fund source. So if they're not being used for those purposes, then they need to go back to the Green Space Fund.
Back to the general.
Sorry, back to the general.
The other G.
The other G fund.
Right? Okay, thanks, Amy.
I just want to say I appreciate the conversation. We do a lot of meetings. We just talked about the budget meetings, but I think it's important, Gavin, I want to give you a shout out for this, highlighting things that we all sort of understand and think is clear. But if I were a resident, I would be tuning into this meeting, but not probably the budget meetings. And so everything that you just said, I think is so important, but I think it probably got lost in the minutia of a budget meeting. But the idea that we're knowingly and safely and wisely doing deficit spending next year is critical messaging, contrary to whatever the other message could be. So again, I think it's important that we do highlight these things. I really appreciate you bringing those comments forward.
Right. And I think maybe the other message we're hearing is it makes the most sense to leave funds in the general fund until we decide to spend them.
Right.
But that being said, I agree that our budget speaks to our goals.
Mhm.
And so anyway, so I think with that, let's go ahead and vote on the amendment. So Judy, let's call the roll.
Can I just, let me check to see exactly what,
To add 40,000 from the general fund
well, that's
to,
from the general fund. Okay.
yeah, we're
Okay,
not,
got
because
it.
we're not able to do it from the Green Space Fund, which is what I wanted to do. But anyway, so from the general fund to the Affordable Housing Fund.
So I ran some numbers just for point of clarification. Was Marianne to see 40,000 in the affordable fund, or that's moving in an additional 40,000 to the already $8,000 there are in the fund?
Correct.
So it will be for a total of 48.
So I guess then my question is, given the prior conversation is, are you requesting that in this budget, that money is moved into that line? Or are you simply requesting that I mean, does it have to be moved prior to being needed if it's in this budget, or can it be held?
So I think that we need to modify the budget to submit to the tax commissioner with this additional $40,000 in it is what they're suggesting for 2023.
Okay, got it. So your numbers are,
My numbers don't work. No, right.
okay,
I'm not right.
you're not right, but we got it at this end, so I'm gonna go ahead and call roll on the motion. DeVore Leonard,
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
MacQueen?
Yes,
Housh?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
thank you.
Amy.
Okay, so otherwise, the public hearing has been opened. Anything else from council members? Any questions or comments from citizens? All right. Yes. Yes.
So I came down tonight after reading several letters that showed.
Identify yourself.
What?
Who are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Kate LeVacant. I'm a village resident. And I came down to ask questions of village council after reading several letters showing concern for the police budget. I'm very interested. I'd like to thank council for the work that you do. I really do appreciate it, and I think it's a great gift. So one letter that came out talked about the amount per person, per capita, that various municipalities spend on the police. They did not mention how much per capita Yellow Springs spends, but I was able to get a rough figure, and it looks to me like we already spend significantly more. I see these many letters listed today saying we'd like to see council consider police department budget reduction. I would appreciate hearing from council their thoughts on our budget, which appears to me to be larger than most of our neighboring municipalities in terms of per capita expense, and why we should not be thinking about budget reduction instead of budget increase.
Good. Thanks, Kate. All right, and we'll probably hold on that and respond like towards the end. Yep. John, did you have? Or yes.
Hi, I'm Tanya Moss, and I live in Yellow Springs. So I wanted to also comment on the police budget. First of all, I know this is incredibly hard work that you have to go into a lot of weeds to look at. I really feel that given the focus of the council on infrastructure and affordable housing, that in 2023, we really need to make an intentional plan and discussion about policing in the village, in particular about reducing the force by identifying precisely when there need to be 2 police officers on duty, when there need to be 1, the kinds of services that the police provide for the village, and be very thoughtful in that discussion, because 38% of the budget is simply too much if we have a goal of creating affordable housing and taking care of infrastructure needs. It's just too big of a chunk. We're all having to deal with less right now. We're anticipating some kind of deficit again in 2024 likely. And so we really need to think about how we can do more with less. And the policing budget is a very clear choice given the priorities and the sort of philosophical leanings of our community. So I'm starting to dive in and learn about this process, and I'm going to do more work in that area. And I'm looking forward to creating a very thoughtful sort of way to move forward in which we can take that percentage down and push it more toward the needs of individual people in this village, especially people who are living month to month and aren't able to get decent affordable housing in the community.
All right. Thanks, Tanya.
Hi, I'm John Hempling. After last meeting, I dug a little bit deeper into the numbers, and it appeared that excluding, just looking at the sort of non-enterprise side of the budget, not looking at loss in place or broadband or water and sewer or electric, and taking into account inflation, that sort of the non-enterprise side of the budget has gone up 10% about since 2020 and 2021. And so I don't know, I missed the beginning of this meeting, but at the previous meeting, at least, I didn't hear, I guess, explanations for why that is. I think it's sort of course, easiest for us to see that the police budget is obviously much larger than other municipalities on a per capita basis. People like to say that that of course our per capita spending on the police would be larger than Cedarville's, but 3 times larger seems like quite the exaggerated size, and I think, of course, the number of personnel, and also the fact that we have our own dispatchers as opposed to simply using the Greene County Dispatch Service, surely must be a significant part of that. Although I'd be interested to learn more about other parts of the budget as well. So yeah, of course, I'd like to see the council, of course, talk about their thoughts regarding the size of the police budget. And thank you.
All right, thanks, John. So I think I'm going to say a few things. This has been an ongoing discussion over the 4 work sessions and several council meetings we've had about the budget. To Tanya's point, we have made a commitment that over 2023, we're going to look carefully at the policing budget. And I think Gavin did a good job of leading a work session that's going to be a continued discussion. I did indicate at the beginning of this discussion that in terms of personnel cost, unless we haven't gotten accurate numbers, it's been indicated that we're talking about an increase of 25,000, which I think is a combination of trying to lower costs with some reconfiguring of our staff, especially given that we've agreed to an overall 4% increase in cost of living, for all staff. And then I would say similarly with Public Works, since John, you kind of brought that up, we've also looked at ways to sort of bring more things in-house, and I think ultimately see some savings in the future. But without a doubt, there are some increases that are due to inflation / cost of living that are reflected. But ultimately, my calculations, and again, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, is that for the police budget in particular, we're talking about 25,000 increase in personnel costs from last year, and 55,000 minus 94. So I had that at, what did I figure out that was 39,000 for capital expenses. And part of those capital expenses are the match, because we did get our grant to have body cams, which I think is something we've wanted to do in the village. So I do think overall the increase in the police budget is quite modest. But I've heard from all council members that we are dedicated to looking carefully at those expenditures and also thinking transformatively about what our police department should look like. So happy for anyone else to comment. Yeah, Marianne?
Yeah. So it's my sense, and I have no hard figures for this, that the police department started increasing in size and budget proportionately during this century, pretty much. In other words, after 2000 and 2000, 2010, sort of in that sense. That's my sense as a community member watching it happen. And it wasn't a problem because we could pay for it. And, you know, people liked our police department. So now when we started working on the budget, which we started in the fall, is not the time to start cutting things when, I mean, cutting substantially at any rate. So we made, really the only cut we made in the police budget was the vehicle. But I think as one council member, and I think council as a whole pretty much, we plan on looking, really digging deep into the department in 2023. What is it doing? And of course, a lot of what is happening is a lot dealing with mental health issues, aging community, those kind of things, not crime per se, particularly. And then looking at, should we be doing what we're doing? Is there another way to do it? Are there ways that we could farm out some of it or all of it? And so I see, and we're going to talk about it a bit, I think maybe when Gavin talks later in the meeting, to plan for 2023 to really do a deep dive into the department and understand it, because none of us really do. We don't. In fact, I plan on probably spending a fair amount of time writing along, being in the office, so I can understand what is happening, what we're doing. And it's not, I mean, it's a very hard thing to do, because everyone in that department does a great job, I would posit. And they're dedicated to the community. So when you're telling, and I see Chief Burge is on, when you're telling people that you want to start looking at how to cut the department, that's not a fun thing. It's not fun sitting on council, and it's really not fun for those people. In fact, it's very anxiety producing. So I think we have to be sensitive to that as well.
Okay. Kevin?
Yes. As I alluded to earlier, I mean, there were lots of meetings going over these things, and in particular, Chief Burge has a very detailed presentation going through the numbers. I mean, doing very, very data-based decision making, even with respect to the number of officers on duty at the time, and how she's shifted schedules around to make as much sense as possible. And then when the math says you need 2.58 officers, well, that's 3. So there's things like that sort of speak to themselves. And I would just, I've not done the analysis of our community to the next community, in terms of what money is being spent on, but I would put our police department in terms of the type of community policing that we do up against anyone else. And based on my hearing and reading of what Chief Burge has presented, I am comfortable with what we're doing with the budget this year. We did pull back a vehicle that we felt we could wait on that. So again, the information is out there, and I think we're going to move forward this evening, perhaps. But I think as we go forward, we will. I don't know that we could do a better job of spreading out the number of times that we've talked about the budget. Maybe we could do a better job of inviting people in to make sure that they get announced a bit more early. And so perhaps we can do that. This seems to be an interesting topic to a large part of the community. And so I think we'll probably have some very special police budget presentations next year. I'm not calling for that, but I'm suspecting to alleviate folks' concerns. I think it's important to do so. Any concerns I would have had, again, when you look at the detailed numbers that Chief Burge offered, it satisfied my concerns.
All right, Gavin.
Yeah, and we will talk about this a little bit later when we get into the work session follow-up. But first of all, thanks for coming and for sharing questions. I'll just respond to a couple things. Some of the per capita stuff, I'll just say, like, I'm not sure that it's easy. It's hard to compare apples to apples, and so I haven't seen anything yet where I'm like, yes, that makes total sense. That's easy to use, et cetera. So, and to me, it falls in the category of one of the many things that we want to spend some more time looking at over the coming months. I think Marianne, others have said it pretty clearly that I'll speak for myself. I feel like I made a fairly conscious decision in this process to say, hey, this year's pretty much status quo, and then we got to spend some time digging into this. To that end, I'll say, like, let's just take it to its maximum, would be no police department whatsoever in Yellow Springs, and we only have sheriffs that come here. I don't think that's what I hear from most villagers of what we want. I haven't heard anyone say anything on the above the sort of maximum of 2 officers on duty regularly. And at our work session, the chief shared that right now it's actually only 37% of the time that we have 2 people on duty. So just to say that we're sort of arguably, we're under the max that most people have thought we might be at. The minimum, I don't think there's much support for, although, I think if we created space for community dialogue, maybe there are people who think that. And so then you're working within a relatively small window in between, and that has all to do with people who work here. That I don't think anyone here, I haven't heard anyone that has significant, I've heard random things here and there, but I think in general, as others have said, people feel like the specific officers, like the humans who work here on a regular basis, are doing a good job. And so most of the money that's in the budget is these cost of living increases, which from my perspective, if we as a body pass policy that means that we have this many people, that they should get increases to match what it costs to live. And frankly, when we looked at the comparison of what we pay officers in Yellow Springs compared to other neighboring areas, we don't pay as well. So the question of should we have less officers or less on duty, I think is a question that we're talking about, and that over the course of this next year, we're going to have some serious discussion about. And to your point, you mentioned this idea of, like, are there going to be opportunities? I think so much of this conversation has happened in work sessions, and one of the things I'm really thinking about right now is, like, how do we do this process next year in a way where there's times for engagement? And with the public safety work sessions, how do we also create citizen engagement opportunities for that? So just to mention those things. I do want to just mention real quick, we talked about the work session. John, you mentioned specifically dispatch. We got the initial numbers were that it was more costly to do dispatch through the county than to do it in-house. We have some more recent numbers where, and honestly, I have not been able to look at them closely, but my understanding is that there would be some savings, but not a lot, and it opens up other questions of the dispatch right now is doing more than just dispatch for the police. It's also essentially like the community switchboard for people calling in for all kinds of other things. So at the work session, we basically said, this isn't really a topic to discuss because the number we got originally was just lower. It would cost less to do it in-house. Now that question is a little bit open, but I'll just say we just got those numbers a few days ago, and I think we need to look at them some more. I think those are most of the things that folks brought up. And we will talk a little bit more about this as we talk about the next steps for the work sessions. And I'd say we very much would value, I've said this with my colleagues and then also the public, if you have opinions on how we should go about this process, would be very open to feedback about how to do this process well in 2023.
All right. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I would love to add some to the conversation. First, thank you guys for coming and voicing your concerns. I want you to know that we are diligent in trying to find cost savings within our police department budget. In fact, we've increased our services without increase in costs. John mentioned that we've gone up 10% since 2020, he quoted. Inflation, just year to year in the last 2 years has been, so.
That's after taking into account inflation.
Okay, but highlighting that, we increased our services without adding significant, actually without adding any additional headcount to our department. We're doing more with less people. We now have a full-time community outreach person. So we're doing a lot more service with less folks than we've had in the past. So our department isn't growing exponentially in number of folks. We are looking for all the cost-saving opportunities that we can. For the dispatch quote, when we first started talking about this in the work session, the numbers just didn't work out for us to outsource or dispatch. And independent of all the other unique attributes of our dispatch, because I think we're uniquely positioned to serve our community. I think the three of you could agree that we have a particular approach and sensitivity to the way that our community wants to handle the calls that we get. And so we're uniquely positioned to serve that. The quotes that we received, the initial quote just didn't match up to what we will be giving up. The additional quote that we received just recently, just a couple of days, and I, after digesting it and speaking with the county staff, sent it right along to council, and it's contingent on so many other things happening that are outside of our control and the county control, depending on other municipalities and committing to a long-term plan to share a workstation. So there are things there that it's not, the cost savings are contingent upon so many things that are outside of control that it leaves us very exposed and vulnerable to others changing their mind and their service. So I want to just reassure you that we have looked at all the cost-saving measures, and we continue to work on those things. And I welcome the opportunity with council to have the conversations about the budget, including a line-by-line item review on these matters.
Can I add one more thing? Sorry, just this came up in the work session, but just to say, there was multiple points where I think some of the core questions for all of us to consider as villagers is sort of what is the quality and what is the safety that we expect. So for instance, there's money in the capital, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, there's money in our capital budget for new bulletproof vests because they are past their safe life of the equipment. We could make we could make a decision that we would not have bulletproof vests. There's a safety issue that goes along with that. Now, just to say, there are safety issues that go along with not filling in potholes, and there are safety issues that go in with not having enough, people to work on our electric department, and so on and so forth. But that's a safety thing. And around the quality question, a lot of the question becomes, I mentioned the sheriff's department, for example. The question becomes do we feel like the police department is working toward service of essentially our goals or our values as a community? So one of the things that's been really positive about the conversation, I think, is that the commitment that the chief has currently to the guidelines for local policing, that I think a lot of folks, I'll say myself before I was on council, worked hard to try to make sure that we had in place, and I think are being followed more than they ever have before. So that you get advantages of having people that are trying to police the way that we want them to police. So anyway, just to say that as we go into budget stuff, the part of the question is going to be what levels of quality and what levels of safety are we comfortable with? Okay. Is that a fair assessment? Anyway.
Sounds good, Gavin. Jessica?
Jessica Thomas, Yellow Springs News. In regard to the specific numbers about the county dispatch, several of you have alluded to additional services that our dispatch provides. Can you elaborate on that and list the actual services instead of being vague? Thank you.
Also, can we maybe just focus back on passing this ordinance, because we have gone very far down a rabbit hole.
I'd like to do that as well, but I mean, it seems like everyone wants to talk about this, so I don't know, Josue, can you respond to just what our dispatch does?
Sure.
Quickly, and then I would like to move us on to just voting, because I think one thing we've been responsive to is that, yes, we are listening. The increase in the police budget is very modest, mostly reflecting cost of living increases and some capital opportunities, but let's maybe just quickly justify.
Before Josue, Brian, you mentioned earlier that the joint meeting and the public safety meeting and those meetings are available on YouTube. And there is a tremendous amount of information and every answer to every question that has been asked and all of the suggestions about how to do things have been addressed in those sessions. I highly recommend that you watch those and then bring the questions that you have after watching those, because
Just briefly, the call volumes and the call service types vary from all the emergency items, whether it's a power outage, it's a police emergency, a medical emergency, folks having bats in their house, what do I do with my dead animal? There are all these different services that our citizens need, and they don't know who to call. They call dispatch. I know there's times where I've had to sit at dispatch because of the volume of calls. I think I took a call from Matt Raska on one of the village-wide power outages. That's, we physically staff those phones and dispatch.
Yeah, I guess I'm actually a little bit surprised that it's a question of like how our dispatch goes above and beyond. But I think that would be a better story to like talk to the dispatchers. We talked about like a day in the life or whatever, because I see it happen all the time. I mean, Tanya, I guess we're kind of moving away from comments, but if you have something that's really brief and
I watched both. I watched the work sessions, and one thing that was referenced very regularly was Chief Burge's presentation, but I couldn't find my way to that. Is there a way to find that online? And then I also wanted to ask, at what point was the deputy chief sort of taken off the table in terms of asking for increase? I couldn't find that in the minutes, and I might have not seen that. And then finally, as part of cuts are hard. I've been part of cuts myself. They're always dehumanizing in many ways. And so that is not the goal here, but there are priorities and goals that the village is setting, and we need to think about them very carefully together. So thank you.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, let's make sure that we flag on Facebook, especially that session with Chief Burge.
We can do that. We'll post the presentations. We'll probably create an itemized list of all the video recordings of all the work sessions,
Okay.
including Chief Burge's presentation.
Yeah, that would be good. Okay. All right, looks like Gavin wants to.
Yeah, just to say, I think I understand we want to move on. Part of the hard part of this is figuring out how to have enough citizen comment, and also, anyway, just to say, it's good you're asking questions. I think it's healthy for us. This is the most time we spent in this space talking about policing issues. We've talked about it in the sessions, but there's no citizen comment for that. So I understand it's taken us a few extra minutes, but is there a time? I don't know. Anyway, I don't think that we've gone through all these pieces and taken citizen comment about it in this way.
Mm-hmm.
it would have been taken. I mean, those were open meetings. People just did not attend them, so.
You're saying that the work sessions or because we had
The session that, the public safety session, those are all public meetings. so.
Everything's notified in the news.
No, I understand that they're on, but in terms of there being a back and forth about it, or there being like, for instance, with the public safety work session, there wasn't a citizen comment component of the agenda.
I've never been in a meeting where if a citizen did want to comment, that their comments were not.
Okay, I'm just saying functionally, it's just,
We
there's a process here.
we made no extra effort
Yeah.
to either put them in a time when people could come or notify people of them, I would say. I mean, there weren't flyers, there weren't things in the newspaper, there weren't.
Absolutely, they were noticed as public meetings.
There's always
as are
notices.
every one of our meetings.
Well, given the fact that we have people here and we didn't have people there, I think it speaks to the fact that it was not easy for people to get there, or they didn't know about it. But let's just move on. Everyone seems to agree to that, except we have to keep talking about it.
Yep. Well, I mean, I think we're actually all on the same page. We're looking at these things very carefully.
I don't know who brought this tray of treats, but they're right in front of me.
We
And
need to close that public hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. All right. So I think we are going to close the public hearing, and let's go ahead and yes.
so there was a question asked on Zoom. We just need to, this is not citizens' concerns.
Correct.
So I think there was a question, we just need to say it's not citizens. Okay.
Okay. All right, so Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll.
You did, and it's done, so you're on to the
Okay,
next one.
so we're ready to go. All right. So next up, let's do ordinance 2022-42 by title only.
This is the 2022 fourth quarter supplemental appropriations and declaring an emergency.
We vote on the budget?
Yes, you did.
Okay, I thought we voted on the amendment.
Yeah,
We
actually,
just voted on the
yeah, I think
amendment.
we did just vote on the amendment.
No, I was calling roll on the. You
We
don't
just
need-
voted on the amendment.
Let's do it.
Yeah, well, let's just make sure, because I thought
Okay.
we just voted on the amendment. So, all
Okay,
right, so let's
we'll
vote
now-
on the amended ordinance.
Thank you. All right, Tausch,
Yes.
MacQueen,
Yes.
DeVore Leonard,
Yes?
Stokes.
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 2022-42, title only.
2022 fourth quarter supplemental appropriations and declaring an emergency, Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, so since this is an emergency, I'm gonna open the public hearing, and, are you explaining this one?
Yes.
Okay.
This is me. So there's some good news. There's some good news in here. The good news is we have additional expenses that are due to just routine activities for which most of them are being covered. So I'll do the easy ones first. The enterprise, which is the largest amount, the enterprise need an additional, particularly the electric fund needs an additional $20,800. And this is to cover the cost of plan reviews for the DDC development and the electrical engineering. That's money that's being reimbursed to us. It actually has been prepaid already. In order for us to spend it, we need to put it in the budget. And this is a process that was referenced in the audit report that you would have received, that the auditors requested that we book reimbursements in the revenue line items and have a separate expense booked to wherever the appropriate expense is. So a lot of these transactions you'll see here are booking those revenues in revenue lines and booking the expense to our budget. So that's the case for the electric fund in total of $20,800. That's also the case for the police department budget at $10,375. Almost $10,000 of it is for the grant that we received for the therapy dog. If you recall, this was a reimbursement grant, so we had to spend the money first and then get reimbursed by the mental health board. So we spent it from available funds we had. Now we're getting reimbursed, so we're booking the revenue on the revenue side and booking the expense on the expense side. So that's for that. Likewise, for the planning and zoning, we've increased that $1,000. Those are plan review fees that we've collected for the DDC development. And then finally, this is the good news, is the $5,500. Council took action to expand services for the utility roundup. That is resulting in more expenses for the utility roundup, and we need to add that to the budget to be able to cover those additional subsidy or utility payment assistance. And that covers the supplement. I'm sorry, I've got one item. That's the mayor's court fund. This is really a pass-through fund. We collect fees and then we remit them. There was a note on this mayor's court budget in the 2021 audit. We're putting in the expense in the budget so that Amy can book all those receipts and those distributions of those fees collected through mayor's court. I'll take any questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
Well, this all seems appropriate. Thank you very much for the good news and the neutral news. We appreciate everything that's not negative. I would just like to, since we did just speak to the utility roundup program, it's been a while, I think, since we have done anything in particular about that, but perhaps as we wrap up the close of this year, the utility roundup program is a program whereby whatever your utility bill is from the village, you can round it up to the nearest whole dollar, and that few cents from 1 to 99 cents would go into this fund. You can also just come downtown and make contributions to that fund. You can also, as my family and I are doing, add a monthly additional contribution, to your monthly bill, and that additional contribution goes into the utility roundup fund. I probably could go on and say more. Certainly whenever someone new comes into the village, when they start up their utility accounts, the form that you fill out encourages you or gives you an opportunity to contribute or to make changes to your bill so you can contribute to that fund. So what I want to do is just make sure that we all understand that the fund does not grow by itself. Each of us needs to actively opt in to the fund. There was conversation early on that we made it an opt-out program. That means everybody would be in it, and then you'd have to expressly opt out. We chose to make it opt-in, and now we're asking more of you. If you are already, please do more. And if you're not already signed up for the Utility Roundup program, please consider doing a little bit to help a lot. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, and again, I'll just underscore that, I think supplementals can be confusing, but a lot of times it really is that we've got revenues that have come into the general fund that are supposed to be redistributed out, which is what we're looking at here. So, Gavin, did you have something? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll. Or I'm going to close the public hearing and let's go ahead and call the roll.
Thank you. Stokes?
Yes.
MacQueen?
Yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Tausch?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's look at Resolution 2022-73, which we can do by title only.
This is amending the employment agreement with Paige Burgess, Chief of Police.
All right. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Josue?
Thank you, Brian. This is a continuation of conversation we had over 2 council meetings about needing to make changes to the personnel contracts to allow for greater carryover time. Currently, all contract employees are limited to 40 hours of carryover when the non-exempt employees are allowed to carry 160 hours. There's been challenging 2 years where vacation time has been difficult to schedule. I mean, we're currently seeing it with Chief. We got busy 2 weeks before the end of the year, and we've got some staff that are out. And so it makes it difficult for the managers to take time off. So this allows for greater flexibility.
Okay. And this is what we did in the prior meeting with our other leadership team, right?
Correct. So council did it for my contract back in June. We've done it for Denise and for Johnny.
Okay. Gavin?
I'm going to just make one comment now related to all of these following pieces, which is just, my understanding is that from talking to the solicitor and from the information we received, this is essentially ensuring that our employees, in particular our managers who worked really hard, particularly during the pandemic, but afterwards are getting access to the hours and the pay that they have earned. And so just want to say, I think we really appreciate the work that managers have done, and that this is just sort of related to our audit. This is just making sure everything is lining up, everything's fair. So it's just sort of cleaning up, those pieces, and I'm fine with all of them.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Then let's look at Resolution 2022-74 by title only.
This is authorizing payment of invoices with then and now certificate for the fourth quarter of 2022.
All right. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Josue?
Thank you, Brian. This is to authorize the payment of the second invoice to Julian and Group, which is our annual audit team. The total contract is for $10,500. This is the second payment of 3 payments. The final payment will be $2,100, which is also included in the memo.
Okay. Questions? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay. And then the next 5 resolutions are basically, I think what was distinct about Pages was that, as Gavin mentioned, it was aligning the carryovers with contracts. This is about cleaning up vacation time basically that was not able to be taken during the pandemic to the service of the village. So we'll go ahead and bring in the first resolution, and then Josue can give any other preference. So resolution 2022-75, we can do by title only.
All right, this is approving carryover of vacation hours for the village manager.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just say that in this case, Josue's contract allows him to cash out any vacation hours that he's not able to use. We had made an attempt to carry over hours, which the state auditor didn't like. So this is officially, bringing those hours forward since he didn't cash them out in 2021. And then we'll see what the next resolution has to say. Do you need to add anything to that?
Oh, got it.
Okay. So any questions? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. So let's go ahead and do the next 2022-76 by title only.
This is approving payout of vacation hours for the village manager.
All right. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So again, totally allowed under the contract. Josue's attempt was to use those hours. Unfortunately, he didn't get the chance to do that. So we're really just approving what's already part of his contract. All right. So can I get a motion? Or I'm sorry, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. 2022-77, title only.
This is approving carryover of vacation hours for Public Works Director.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Johnny's contract's the same. Any questions? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And then 2022-78, title.
This is approving payout of vacation hours for the Public Works Director.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Same protocol. Any questions or comments? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And finally, 2022-79.
This is approving carryover of vacation hours for Planning and Zoning Inspector, Economic Development Liaison.
All right. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Only difference here is Denise's carryover she's planning to use, so her contract would allow her to cash out, but as was, I think, everyone's intent, they would rather use their vacation hours, which we want to continue to promote, but Denise is able to do that. All right. Questions or comments? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Legislation is done. We're now in the citizen concerns component. So any comments about items not on the agenda? So we got Jessica here, so nothing.
Somebody on Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody on Zoom? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
Missy
All right.
wants to.
Great.
Give me 1 second.
Got her.
Good evening, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, I do have a citizen's concern. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 of us here. I did have a statement, but I didn't get to finish it, so I'm just gonna do my best, okay?
All right.
Okay, my name is Teresa Monet Gill. Most people know me in town as Misty. I live at 1 Lawson Place, apartment 31. I am a resident of Yellow Springs. I'm a busker in Yellow Springs. I'm a volunteer in Yellow Springs, and I also work in Yellow Springs. I am speaking as someone who knows the extreme stress when faced with the threat of homelessness. I am speaking as someone who knows about the importance of needing an advocate when you feel you're being treated unfairly. I can't imagine the heartache of a landlord requiring you to leave a place you've called home for 10 plus. Yellow Springs is a small town where it is easy to establish relationships
to the point where you even begin to develop support networks amongst each other. These support networks are especially important amongst our elderly, our disabled, and poor communities. I've witnessed all three groups of those people suffer with the threat of debilitation and suffer with the threat of debilitation under the wrong circumstances. And such is the case with my friends, Charles and Denise, both residents, longtime residents of Yellow Springs. Both are elderly, both are disabled, and both live together off of a low-income Section 8 voucher. Both now have been served with the letter terminating their tenancy at the end of the year, which is now in only 10 days. Sadly, that landlord is the village of Yellow Springs. I am asking that the village reconsider its approach as landlords when terminating the lease of the elderly or a disabled individual. I am requesting that the village research Ohio law on evicting a Section 8 tenant and follow proper protocol by providing a detailed explanation as to why their tenancy is being terminated. Ohio law states that in any judicial action, an owner must rely on the grounds cited in the termination notice given to the tenant when filing judicial action. Charles and Denise also do not have a working vehicle, which has heightened the anxiety of this situation, not only for them, but for those that care about them as well, like me. I am asking village as new landlords to reconsider their approach when evictions of handicapped people. And for instance, the next person is going to speak.
Okay, thanks, Misty.
Yes, hello. My name is Michael Arledge. I'm also a Yellow Springs resident. Been here 11 years. I'm speaking on behalf of two of my neighbors and friends of mine that are mentally handicapped. They are being forced out of their home that they've lived in for 13 years now. And I don't know what the process is why you village council members have taken the steps, the votes to evict mentally handicapped people out into the cold. Why do you people take these steps to eliminate, to put people out in the cold? And also first raise their rent and then put them out in the cold. How do you sleep at night?
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm Charles. Y'all know me, man. I don't hold back my tongue. I'm just going to say this. I think you village people, in my opinion, that you advertise, I talked to your news media down there at the newspaper before you ever took over ownership, because advertise affordable housing. If you're increasing it for a price, you use the word affordable, that's misrepresentation of the law. Now, when you're putting disabled people out or anybody else, when I ask you, when they talk to me, your village newspaper down there, I said, look, you got disabled people here, man. We can't get up and get around because you got you a job or whatever, right? I said, but I've been here over 12 years. I still got the same house key you gave me when I moved in, okay? Everybody knows Denise Struckman, okay? The fire department, the police department, everybody in the council, missing enough. These neighbors look out for her when she's having seizure of, seizures and stuff. And you should check that, man. So being a mentally and physically disabled person like I am and her, you take that and try to make a buck off, man. When you false advertise what you said you were still keeping affordable housing, that's increased housing. You wrongly representation of the word affordable and you put increase. So there you go, back to Misty.
No, it's Cece's time.
My name is Cecil Glenn. Been here 27 years. I have never heard about anybody get put out of their apartment, especially being as they are today. But knowing these folks since they've been here, I have never heard of them interrupting anybody's stuff, you know, by having them kicked out. Nobody ever. So I don't understand what's happening right now.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So I will say, you know, council doesn't have any direct involvement with loss in place. And I'm not sure how much we can process this tonight, but I mean, Josue, is this something that you will follow up on, or?
Certainly I follow up since it's something that's coming out of my office and working with the solicitor. I'm limited to what details I can share, but there's more to the story than what you're hearing. All of this has been vetted by legal, and so we're going about this process the most sensitive way that we can. We did provide 60-day notice to the tenants, and we're in the circumstances that we wish we weren't in. We took over the property to provide dignified housing for all of the tenants in the building, and we have to think of all of the tenants. I'm happy to have individual conversations with counsel, and certainly Amy Blankenship, our solicitor, has been involved and knows the details, and so we're happy to have follow-up conversations with you.
Okay. Does anything from council at this point?
Yes, I would want to find out what's happening. I mean, as someone said, I know that it was going to maybe come to mediation, because I got a notice about that. If that didn't happen, I don't know why. Yeah, I would like to talk to you, Josue. Thanks.
Well, I nodded, so certainly I'm interested in getting information. This is all news to me. I trust that everything's been done decently and in order, but just anything that can be done to sort of catch us up will be helpful.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate citizens coming forward. I will say that, you know, I've also been reached out to, and so we're paying attention, and so we will follow up. Okay. All right. Any other citizen concerns? Okay. So no special reports, so manager's report.
All right. I've included in my packet, in the packet, the manager's report. I do have one item that I had hoped to bring to council, but it turns out that we need to do a lot more work. So in a nutshell, I think I spoke with some of you a while back about a local resident wanting to donate land to the village, gift land to the village that is right on the periphery. And speaking with legal and scheduling, it does require ordinance, so it's something that we can consider today. We've got some timing issues, and we need an ordinance with 2 reads to be able to accept the gift. So I won't go into too much detail because we just can't take action at this meeting. And I don't know that the party will still be interested come January. There's something that they wanted a council to consider before the end of the year, and that is they wanted to gift the village 22 acres of conservation land on the periphery of the village. It's outside of the corporate limits. It's the land that's adjacent to our corporate limits between the village and Ellis Pond. It's about 22 acres. We couldn't, because of the timing, we can't get an ordinance together, but I'll connect with the resident and see if that's something that they're interested in picking up in January, and I'll bring that back to council. On the other projects update, you've seen that we've got the stormwater project happening. That's underway. We've got the significant portion of the Glen Helens done. Now we're moving into the front of the John Bryan, and we expect to be out behind the Dane Street businesses in a couple weeks. So that's underway. You'll see a lot more limestone because these guys have been hitting a whole lot of rock out there. An update, council requested an update on the CRB. I had been in communication with some of you, particularly Brian and Carmen, about following up with the firm that's going to do the legal review. They've been unresponsive to us. I'll take that as a sign that they may no longer be interested in this project. And due to the timing of the year, we need to unencumber those funds. So we're going to release those funds back to the general fund. And if that's something that council wants to revisit, we'll need to put it in the budget for next year. So that's on the CRB. On the T-Mobile tower, the SBA tower, that's what's right behind our yard out at Sun Farm. In 2019, council received an offer for a buyout of the lease in the amount of $305,000. Council at the time rejected the offer because, particularly Kevin Stokes, you expected that the value to be worth more than the 305. This year, they've issued us another offer for $385,000. So the premise that council had back then, that the lease was worth more than the 305, has certainly stood the test of time, is now up by about 26% at 385.
And what's our annual lease?
I will have to get you those exact numbers, but it's around 20,000 a year, and that's what you see in the commercial revenue line that Marianne asked about earlier. We're generating from commercial leases, we're generating $60,000. That's what we're expecting to generate this year, and we expect to generate probably a little bit more than $60,000 from commercial rents. That includes the Verizon tower that's behind this building, the Stony Creek property, and the Pottery and the SBA tower. So that one's over 20,000. We can certainly, if council is interested at the next council meeting, we can run a net present value calculation of what we expect the stream of payments to be worth to us now, and we can make a comparison. There's some intangible value that goes along with the property that we might not be able to catch value for us, but I think the future owner of the lease would certainly capture value. So an example would be that because the property is within a critical infrastructure of ours, there's constant security and power to it, because we can't afford to be without power here at the John Bryant Center, as a good example. The parking lot gets plowed and cleared because this is where a public safety center is, or emergency command center, if you will. So there's those things that you can't put a value on, that they're worth significant. So if council's interested, please let me know. We can run the numbers. We can also have a broker or a third-party consultant evaluate the value and negotiate if council is interested in settling this perpetual easement to T-Mobile and the SBA Corporation.
Let's just get more information. I don't want to ask a bunch of questions now. I do have questions. I'm right now not, I haven't seen anything that makes me want to change right now, but I am interested in seeing what the marketplace looks like in terms of additional tenants on the tower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an excellent question. We've asked that question. Unfortunately, the way the lease is structured is that the leaseholder gets all additional revenue from additional tenants. So that's something so it's on them to bring on more people. Now we can ride on it. If we have a service that we want to put onto that tower, say emergency radios, or we wanted to run our own private network for either internet or a phone service for our workforce, we could certainly do it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an exemption that allows us to do that.
Okay.
But
Agenda item next time?
yeah, yes.
Well, we'll discuss that. It may just be something that could be in the manager's report.
Yeah, and I'd be happy with that.
So,
yeah.
Okay. Any other, Marianne?
Josue, I noticed that in every manager's report, you report the clean water, stormwater,
Yeah.
and you report the change in water loss from previous year. I also would like to see the percentage of water loss, which seems like is maybe about 25%. So I think that would be a helpful number to have include along with the other numbers that you're including.
Yes, those are, you know, Brad and I have talked about which numbers to include there. We decided on the year-to-year change to water loss reduction because we wanted to compare what water loss we cut from last year. There are two other numbers that were important, and one is the water loss in the current month. So what was produced versus what was built in the current month. So we have that. We were sensitive to how to clog up this, how to put all that information in the report. So what we'll do for the next one is when we have December's number, we'll run tables that would show the difference in the month-to-month water losses and the year-to-year changes. The reason we instituted this year-to-year change was we wanted to see how successful our intervention strategies were. Did we really have the effect that we were looking at?
Yeah,
So,
and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I would like to see the actual numbers for water loss. And then something else, this is to council and Josue, I guess. Earlier this year, I brought a written annual report from the island of Vinyl Haven, which I thought was readable and something that I think would benefit the community. And I noticed that in his report, Josue mentioned the annual report. And so I'm wanting to know from council, really, is there interest in having a written annual report that would include the village government and the commissions, basically, the sort of top and budget, the top level things that the village has done throughout the year that could be in hard copy form for people that wanted it, and in online form for, you know, we'd attach to, well, we probably already do put something on our website, but, so I want to know, is there interest in?
And so I will say, staff has thought there was interest because they're planning to do that. So, yeah, so I'll say, you know, I'm interested in that.
yeah, and I'll add that.
So I think that's the plan, right?
And we will want to do something beyond what was in the New Haven, not New Haven.
Vinyl Haven.
Vinyl Haven report. The Vinyl Haven report, about 40 pages were the audit, their annual audit. I think we have a great annual audit. I don't think that you guys might want to see 40 pages of the annual.
And we don't need to pay for printing a bunch of.
But we'll definitely include something from the annual audit. The only catch to it is that we'll be operating sort of a year behind because our audit for 2022 should no anonymous citizens complaints happen this year, we should be done by May of next year, which is too far out for us to publish those numbers. But so we'll publish this year's consolidated 21's consolidated financials and a summary of our revenues and expenses for 2022 subject to audit. And then we're already putting material together. So we put together about a 20-page to 30-page PowerPoint presentation on the accomplishments, top level review. And then for the first quarter, we have a police department report and we have a public works department report with pictures and all the bells and whistles. So we are putting the content together. It's a matter of bringing it together into one concise document. And I think there is a printing cost and there's a layout cost that we have to set aside some funding for to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be dependent. I would love to get a newsletter out to every resident, like some of our surrounding municipalities. In the past, that's been discussed internally, and that didn't seem to have a lot of value that the citizens would get new information from a printed material that they couldn't get somewhere else, whether the news publishing the stories that they do or us putting it on Channel 5 or on the web for public consumption. So I think I would love to get something that is graphically appealing and well organized digitally, and we can talk about printing and how much do we want to print, how much do we want to pay to get it printed. The other thought would be I would, if you recall, we did, for the comprehensive land use plan, we paid the Yellow Springs News for a 4-page spread on the newspaper, so they could look at a summary of the comprehensive land use plan. So I think one of the things we want to work towards is being able to do something that our citizens can open up in the paper in a 4-page spread. It's all there. That's going to cost us a little money. Rates at the Yellow Springs News has gone up, so we'll work with them to get something on a 2-page spread or 4-page spread.
Thank you.
Do you think we'll want the U.S. Senator letter and all those other letters in there as well?
If you want letters, I'm sure that Dick will offer a letter, Kruger, and Rick Perales.
Yeah, and by the way, this is when Paige mentioned at our work session that she already had her material together, this is what she was talking about. So my understanding is that the goal is by the end of January, we'll have this. And then I think it makes sense to probably print a limited number that we can have at the library and the senior center and whatnot. So cool. All right. Any other questions for Josue?
I had a few other ones. We have something's on in the report. We expect a significant storm Thursday and Friday. So that's something to be mindful. We are currently understaffed in the streets department. We'll figure out how to deal with it, but just want to know that it may take us longer to clear 3 inches of snow that we get. We're working with the staff that we have. I've also included in my report that we will be advertising positions as soon as possible. We've had one from the electric team go to the water plant and one from the streets team go to the water plant. So we're down 1 in electric and down 1 in streets.
Okay. Anything else?
I got a ton more. Do you guys have questions? I think I hit all the items.
You've done all your highlights?
I think so.
You're being offered a license to go.
I know.
Not necessarily.
It's 8:40.
Okay. So then I think we're moving into old business, and Gavin, I think you're up first.
Okay. So I guess, especially given the time, the short version is I think it is very likely we're going to need a committee to work on the public safety follow-up. So I think the short version is I'm going to send out before the next packet. I was honing it. I didn't feel like it was ready for this one. Basically the notes from the work session, and then, I mean, you all were there. I don't need to summarize the things that we said we needed to spend more time talking about. But Marianne and I talked a little bit about this. If anybody else has any feedback, open to it. But I think the short version is we're very likely going to need to set up a committee to work on this. So Judy, I guess if we could put this on the agenda, and I can plan on having something in the packet, and then we can talk about it. The only thing that folks should think about is if you have ideas about a structure and a timeline for a committee, I can't see any way around it. We're going to need to dig in. It's going to take some time.
Are you thinking that, and I'd like to be involved unless we're creating unnecessary concerns with 3 council folks? Are we?
Well, if it were me, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting, I mean, we don't have to resolve the committee on committees, recommendations, and have the ultimate, here's what it's all going to be. I mean, just like we formed a finance committee, maybe we're ready to form that public safety committee. And, the more I think about, again, how we are more efficient about our time at council table, the more I'd like to, decide who those 2 council members are, start digging in and start figuring out what we're going to do. So,
I mean, I didn't want to, if Marianne's committed, I'm comfortable not being involved, but I'm interested.
So, and I don't want to speak for you, so obviously but one of the ideas was that Marianne was interested in being involved, and I am not opposed to not being involved. So the idea that you two would be the people. Goes to then Brian and I were talking, the thing he was referencing in the announcements about agenda planning, and this, when you and I were talking about this, the follow-up from the work session, the idea of having time with the full council talking about this topic with some level of regularity, so there'd be a committee that would be digging in, but then this full body would be getting updates, and not just updates, but chances for substantive engagement and communication. Would be the goal. So this is to say that hopefully everyone is following along. It's a big enough budget item. It's a big enough topic of discussion that we all should be involved in it, but that maybe a couple people would be digging in. And so if that makes sense for y'all to do, that's fine with me.
I'm good with that.
So do you need to wait for Carmen to weigh in? I don't know.
Yeah. I was sort of throwing this out as this is kind of where the thinking is currently, giving you an update. Most of the notes are just pretty straightforward notes from the conversation, but I was basically saying, hey, I think this is the conversation. Nobody expects any business to happen between now and January 3rd related to this. So if we put it on the agenda for the next meeting, then we can sort out exactly who's part of it.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm good with that.
Got it.
Were you going to say something, Marianne?
Oh, I was thinking that the idea of sort of a, well, you maybe say two-prong approach, that there might be two council members and some citizens, and certainly people in the department working as a committee, and yet coming to a council meeting, there can be a discussion, and maybe maybe one council member who's not one of those two says, okay, I would like to look into whatever it is, and then report back to the council meeting so that there could be more engagement.
Yeah.
So I got it on the agenda.
Okay. Mission accomplished.
Were you going to say something else, Gavin? Okay. But I guess just to unveil a little bit more, one of the things that Gavin and I talked about was whether we should think about more time in the kind of work session zone and streamlining our business meetings. So I think that's something that, again, we need to talk about during our retreat. But I like this idea of spending more time on things that actually are going to be game changers. So again, infrastructure, affordable housing, public safety. So something to preview for the future.
Do we have our retreat date?
I think so.
What's that?
Did we get a retreat date? We did, right?
Yeah, and I don't know what it is, actually.
Is it on
Sure, I
this?
sent it out. I was
it's
gone
in
for a while, so
2023,
it's
right?
not, yeah, it's in 2023. It's like February.
I felt like it was on the future agenda items, but yeah, I think we do have one. All right, we'll find that.
And I would just submit, Brian, I think to your comment, and I hope I don't jinx us by saying how early we are right now, but I think we've covered a lot of ground, in part at least, to the work sessions. I mean, we've done a lot of deep digging in some of these other sessions, and I'm going to stop now because I don't want to make us go any longer. So
yeah, well, I'm very compelled to figure out how we spend as much mic time on meaningful discussions as possible.
Right.
So,
Oh,
not that everything isn't important. 26th?
26 from 2 to 6. What you didn't decide on, because you had one of you who can't do it, is the housing
Yep.
session.
Okay.
I'll send that back out.
But yeah, so January 26th from 2 to 6 is at least part one of our council retreat. Okay. All right. The other old business item is Finance Committee. And yeah, mostly I'll just highlight that I thought we had another productive joint meeting of the three taxing bodies. It was nice to see that everyone's still involved and wants to participate. Again, I mentioned that this is one of several videos that you can find on our YouTube station. And yeah, we'll make sure to promote that through our Facebook page so people can find that easily. And, I know all council members were there. we had a good report out from the township about how they're spending their new levy dollars, which made a lot of sense. We were able to follow up on what some of the shared services might look like. And we got a good update from the schools about where they're at. And then, what's also mentioned here is we talked a little bit more in earnest about the reciprocal tax in particular, and some of the things that we have to think about with utility rates. So not sure that I need to dive in deeper, but I think the other takeaway I had is that the other entities are interested in meeting again, but we're gonna not force those meetings. So we're gonna meet as it makes sense to update each other and stay in communication. So any questions or comments about that? All right. So I think we've got one new business item, which is the request, I think from the 365 project, related to Kwanzaa. I guess I'll just start this by saying that, I think we have indicated that our approach to these kinds of requests are probably going to be different next year. Again, we'll see how well council's able to sort of commit to tightening the reins. And my understanding is that the $41,039 that are allocated would basically be for any commission expenditures and any of the other extras that we do. I don't see anything else in the council budget that relates to that. So again, if we were thinking about Kwanzaa and funding it in cash next year, or YS Pride, or any of the other events, right now there's 41,000 in the budget. And we know that, certain commissions are interested in some of those funds for the great work that they do. So that being said, I have constantly indicated that I think we need to be careful about the things that we do fund. And, there's been a clear indication in the past from finance managers that food, for example, is not something that the auditors like to see. So I would recommend, if we were going to fund any of these requests, it would be limited to the $350 for the speakers and performers and the $15 for the rental fee. But anyway, but I'm open to what others think about this request.
I have a question. What is it about food?
Josue?
Yeah, the auditors, their food is an allowable expense where there's a business function associated. So if you have a meeting that goes over 4 hours, for youth programs or for feeding children that might otherwise not have access to food, or it's part of a tutoring program to keep them engaged, those types of food expenditures are allowed. Staff recognition if it's infrequent. Every food expenditure is scrutinized. Is there a business? Is scrutinized. They ask, does it have a business purpose? Is it moving the public purpose forward, and what is it accomplishing? So that's the challenge with food expenditures, that we have to prove that there is a business purpose to them. So we rather avoid the conversation and not spend money on food. So of the request is for $500. The non-food items total $465. $350 for the honorariums and performer fees, $100 for supplies, and then a $15 rental fee.
65.
But the supplies are, I don't know. seem to me to be in that kind of food realm. So,
Okay.
So,
What I'm hearing you say is $365?
that's what I'm recommending.
Okay.
But, you know, I'm open. I love Kwanzaa. I love all the events that we support. So
I'd say 465.
Yeah, I would go for 465.
And this is this year's money.
right. So that's why I wanted to distinguish that. To me, this is kind of the last request under maybe like an older philosophy, but we'll see what happens next year.
So we have this in the budget for this year?
Yes, we have the funds to cover this.
Okay. It sounds like the 465 is darn near 500 and it's all going to be okay with the auditor, so I'm fine with that. Can I just ask a question of, so where or when would we discuss how we make decisions about events and or like commission expenses next year?
Retreat?
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, Jessica?
I just wanted to clarify, how many events this year did we spend money on for food specifically? I'm definitely thinking Pride. That weekend, the village donated food and cooked food.
Yeah, we did do that
And
grill
if you
out.
could just explain how this is different from that.
Yes, so I'll clarify on the Pride event. Actually, I paid for it. Council did offer to cover $200 of that expense. We did not buy food. We rented a towable grill, and then I paid for the food. Kevin and Brian offered to offset that cost. We bought so much food, and we didn't have a huge turnout that we were promised, and so we just had so much food left over that we kept in the freezers here and gave it out as time went on. So I paid for the food at Pride. So the government, taxpayers did not pay for food at Pride.
Yep. So, but, you know, kind of.
Real rental.
Yeah, but to kind of drill down on that, and I think we'd have to like go back. In general, when the requests have come up, I think each time we've said, we'll pay for porta potties, we'll pay for, and you know, speakers have always been something that we've supported. I think where this first came up was with some of the like Spidey events and whatnot with the schools. And so we've just become more and more sensitive to it. But I think to give you an accurate answer, we'd probably have to go back and look at what we've done. But in general, when I think about Pride and some of the other things, we've always been sensitive to pulling out the items like the speakers in particular, where, you know, it's kind of been more acceptable. So it might also be good to highlight that when we talk about the council budget for events and commissions, I just did an estimate for this current budget. It's 0.33% of our budget. And in the past, we've always been mindful of keeping expenditures on these community activities under 1% of our budget. So it's a small amount that makes a big difference to have a healthy, thriving community in my mind. So, okay.
So I hear 465.
Yeah, let's go ahead and I'll ask for a motion
I move.
and a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So last thing is, well, next to last thing, board and commission reports. Any highlights there?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, and I did submit a report about the climate action sustainability planning. We had 10 candidates, and we will be interviewing 5 people, and we have some, I think, some strong candidates. I anticipate that the person will be chosen by early January, and that by the time of our retreat, and maybe before then, we can bring some more information to council about potential projects that the person will be working on to get council input.
All right. Thanks, Marianne. Anything else? Okay. Future agenda items. So I guess one thing I just want to highlight, which is kind of a future agenda item, is I want to make sure that Kevin and Marianne are moving forward with their activities around.
Yes, we are.
Oh, do you know which one thing I'm talking about?
Well,
Committee on
two, about the Committee on Committees and Review.
Yes. Okay, good.
We're meeting Friday.
Excellent. Okay. And Carmen and I are moving forward on Judy's review. I will say we had already, thought with Josue's review that will be pushed out a little bit so that he can get past the new year. Judy, yours might get pushed out a little bit too. So.
No worries. I think I interviewed for that on like Christmas Eve. So I am fine putting that off.
Okay, but those are in the works, and then other future agenda items.
Pushed out for Josue, what would be a good time frame? I'm asking.
I think
Josue as well. Like
February to March.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like Josue had asked for a little bit of time to just get past the new year, and it's been a challenging year. But I think the other piece of the reviews that we want to do a better job of is setting those goals, those personal goals, and then we're going to do a better job of keeping up on those. So I know Josue wanted to have time to do that, and I want to make sure that you guys have time, and then also all of council has time to review it. So,
Okay, thank you.
yep. Okay. Anything else? All right. Wow. Well, it's been quite a year, and so I have no problem with gaveling us out for 2022.
The gavel.
Right.
I've never used that thing, man. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
And yay.
All right. All those in favor?
Yay.
All right. Happy New Year. It's gonna be a great 2023.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.